They were off and now they are on again. And yes, we are talking tariffs and nothing short of the American economy, American business, the American consumer, and the president's agenda all at stake. A federal appeals court has now reinstated President Trump's sweeping tariffs against dozens of America's trading partners on a temporary basis. That twist comes less than 24 hours after the turn of a lower court halting most of Trump's tariff regime, saying that the president overstepped his authority. Trump applauded the appeals court's decision and called on the Supreme Court now to step in. He also attacked the three-judge panel behind the earlier unanimous ruling blocking his tariffs, even asking, where did they come from? Well, one of the two Republican appointees on that panel came from him. Trump himself appointed the judge. Well, this all plays out, a pretty consequential admission now from the Treasury Secretary that the trade talks with China are stalled. CNN's Elena Treen is at the White House. She's got much more for us. What could happen today? That is the unknowable. But what now, Elena?
Yeah, look, Kate, I mean, after a day of really allowing his advisors to speak for him, we did hear from the president directly on this, lashing out about this court decision, even though we saw the federal appeals court quickly step in and kind of revive the tariffs that the Court of International Trade had initially blocked. Now, you mentioned this, but he was particularly irked. You could see this in his very lengthy post on social media that one of the judges on that three-judge panel who decided this ruling was someone that he had pointed himself back during his first term. He argued he was newer to Washington. I would argue he was actually 2 years into his first term when he appointed that judge, and blamed others for telling him and recommending that judge to him. But look, he also asked that the Supreme Court step in immediately to decide this case. He argued that if he had allowed Congress to approve these tariffs initially, they would have sat around, he said, and decided weeks on what these type of levies should be. Remember, this is the reason that the court said that he did not have the authority to impose these sweeping tariffs. They said he could not go around Congress by declaring that national economic emergency. And you also highlighted that point when he said backroom hustlers, a quote from him, should not be allowed to destroy the nation. But while the president kind of was stewing over this all day yesterday, Kate, we did see many of his economic advisors go out, kind of do a tour on the media networks to try and make sense of these different rulings. And one of those people we heard from was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He said essentially, quote, that the president has the right to set the trade agenda for the United States. But then he also argued that the legal setbacks weren't impacting the trade negotiations with a series of different partners. However, one of the United States' biggest trading partners, China, is one where he said some of the conversations have been stalled. I want you to listen to how he put it.
I would say that they are a bit stalled. I believe that we will be having more talks with them in the next few weeks. This is going to require both leaders to weigh in with each other. They have a very good relationship, and I am confident that the Chinese will come to the table when President Trump makes his preferences known.
So as you could hear there, not really projecting a lot of confidence in some of the talks with China. That comes after, of course, they had announced a couple weeks ago a broader trade agreement between the United States and China, trying to avoid some of the steepest tariffs that the president had placed on them. Now it's down to 30% tariffs on China, but still not exactly looking like an optimistic picture of how those negotiations are going, Kate.
Yeah, and also a little bit confusing that the president's preferences are not yet known, because that's what Bessent said. When they are known, they'll come to the table. So, Elena, thank you so much. Much more to come from the White House today. Joining us right now is CNN legal analyst and former U.S. Attorney Michael Moore. And all of this comes on the heels of a lot of whiplash with relation to Trump's tariffs. Appeals courts, lower courts, where are things headed? And that's where the questions begin. What do you think of this decision by the appeals court that just came in, Michael, reinstating Trump's tariffs for now?
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be with you this morning. This is just part of the ongoing tariff chaos that's out there. And what you saw is the trade court essentially saying that the tariffs were illegal and that the president had exceeded his authority. So he couldn't impose these. He didn't have these emergency powers. And frankly, that an emergency is not an emergency just because the executive says it is. And so the federal circuit said, wait a minute, let's wait for a couple of weeks and give us time to look at it. There's a lot of hay being made by the administration that this is somehow a major reversal, but in fact, the court simply did an administrative action to give each side the chance to write their briefs and to make their arguments on whether or not the decision was proper out of the trade court. So, it's not unexpected, and for people who do this, for lawyers around the world that do this, this is sort of normal course of business. For everybody else, and especially for the markets, I think you'll see this is the kind of thing that leads to the ongoing chaos that we've seen out of the administration based on these efforts to sort of, namby-pamby randomly throw these tariffs back and forth in some kind of threat, then back off of them, throw them back in, back off. And that's what leaves us where we are today.
Yeah, namby-pamby is a technical legal term. I have heard you use it in court.
That's right. That's right.
But President Trump is also Elena Trim was talking about what he was posting about this morning. He's also been posting about it last night, I believe it was, or overnight, calling on the Supreme Court essentially to step in and skip the appeals court. What do you think of that?
These cases are all going to ultimately find their way to the Supreme Court. And I think that, whether or not it's on an expedited basis, that frankly becomes up to the court. That's a little bit like being able to predict when the fish are going to bite. It's a little bit of art, a little bit of science, and you can look at some past examples to see when it happens. And so, the court may very well take it up. The problem, frankly, is for the administration is that this court, even though it's made up of a lot of Trump appointees and they've tended to kind of be on the conservative side, the very arguments that Trump is asking and putting forward to the court to support his tariff actions, the court used to strike down some of Biden's actions, essentially that the president does not have this power if it's not explicitly given by Congress. So, he may be, grabbing the dog by the tail, trying to get there too quickly. And he probably should focus on this fight right now in the federal circuit.
Well, we also heard from more than one top White House official yesterday that they were looking into other options now to impose tariffs and circumvent the courts. Let me play some of what we heard.
There are 3 or 4 other ways to do it. There are different approaches that would take a couple of months to put these in place, and using procedures that have been approved in the past.
Of course. There's no plan B. It's plan A. Okay? Plan A encompasses all strategic options, and when we move forward, we had a full view of what the battlefield looks like.
That leading many to wonder, if there are other options, then why didn't they employ these options in the first place? I mean, does that admission, especially when you hear that from Kevin Hassett, 3 or 4 options that we're already looking at, does that have legal implications?
I think it does. And frankly, plan A has only been to try to raise the power of the executive. That's been the plan A, just to go at it with full guns a-blazing. And that has not worked in courts across the country, even by Trump-appointed judges. So I think the administration is seeing that. But to suggest and to now admit the administration is saying, look, there are other things we could have done and maybe we should have done. There are ways around this. And one of those, frankly, would be working with Congress. Congress, under the Constitution, has the power to levy tariffs and taxes. I mean, that's what Congress does. They control the purse and the taxation powers. They should go back to that place. But courts listening to this argument will say, well, wait a minute, how is the administration harmed by leaving this the trade court order in place if in fact you've got a way around it? So you can't abuse and extend your powers unlawfully and claim then that you're going to be heard if in fact you didn't even have to extend those powers in the first place. And that's where they're going to find themselves is they're arguing either to the federal circuit or to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and why declare an emergency and lean on that if there are other avenues to go around it?
Exactly.
Michael, it's always great to see you. Thank you so much. Not a mamby-pamby, ever.
Great to be with you.
Really appreciate it.
Help me! Help me!
Double takedown.
Good job. Good job. Good job. Head there. Need equipment. Good job. Good job. Good job. Good job.
First kill. Double takedown.